The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Khalid Al-Mazrouei's villa in Jumeirah, creating patterns that danced with the gentle sway of palm trees visible through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 42, Khalid embodied the success story that Dubai promised to ambitious men. His import-export business had grown from a small office in Dera to a respected company with clients across the Gulf. The villa, though not palatial by Dubai standards, reflected his careful prosperity. Tasteful furniture from Italian designers, Persian rugs that whispered of old-world elegance, and family photographs documenting a decade of happiness. Khalid's office occupied the corner of the ground floor, where he could observe the household rhythm while managing business affairs. The room smelled of sandalwood and coffee, the sense of a man comfortable in his domain. His leather chair faced a mahogany desk where contracts awaited his signature. Another successful quarter drawing to a close. Through the window, he could see his daughter Semi playing in the garden, her laughter mixing with the distant call to Maghrib prayer from a nearby mosque. At 36, Maha moved through their home with practiced grace. Her dark hair caught the amber light as she supervised their housemaid in preparing dinner, occasionally glancing toward the garden where Semi chased butterflies among the jasmine bushes. She wore a simple abaya that complemented her natural beauty, the kind of effortless elegance that had first attracted Khalid 8 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. Their courtship had been traditional but genuine. Long conversations over coffee, chaperone visits, and a growing certainty that they shared the same dreams of family and faith. The sound of a car door closing announced Faisal's return from the school pickup. Through the window, Khalid watched his driver. A lean man in his early 30s with weathered hands and kind eyes, helped Semi from the back seat of the black Toyota Camry. Faisal had joined their household 3 years ago, recommended by Khalid's business partner who praised the Lebanese man's reliability and discretion. In a city where domestic help often remained invisible, Khalid had made a point of treating Faisal as part of the extended family, inviting him to share meals during Ramadan and ensuring his family back in Beirut received financial support during difficult times. Semi burst through the front door, her school uniform slightly disheveled and her backpack sliding off one shoulder. At 6, she possessed the fearless curiosity that made Khalid's heart swell with pride and worry in equal measure. Her Arabic was sprinkled with English phrases learned at her international school, and her questions ranged from the profound to the delightfully absurd with quick transitions that only children could manage. Khalid scooped her into his arms, inhaling the scent of playground dust and children's shampoo that clung to her hair. Semi settled into his lap with the confidence of a child who had never known anything but love and security. She announced that they had learned about families in social studies, and her teacher had explained that families were people who loved each other and took care of each other. Semi's brow furrowed in the serious way children adopted when processing important information. She tilted her head, studying her father's face with the intensity that always preceded her most unexpected observations. Then came the question that would shatter Khalid's world. Yesterday, when he was at work, Semi had seen Mommy hugging Uncle Faisal in the kitchen. She was hugging him the same way she hugged Khalid when he came home. So Semi wondered if families were people who loved each other, and Mommy loved Uncle Faisal like she loved Khalid. Did that make him their father too? The words hit Khalid like a physical blow, though he managed to keep his expression neutral through years of practice in business negotiations where showing weakness meant losing everything. His daughter's innocent question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications that made his chest tighten and his pulse quicken. Semi continued to study his face, waiting for an answer to what seemed, to her, a perfectly logical question. Khalid cleared his throat, buying time while his mind raced. He explained that sometimes adults hugged to show friendship, not just love. Like when he hugged Uncle Ahmed from work, it didn't make him her father. Semi nodded slowly, seeming to accept this explanation, but Khalid could see her processing the information, comparing it to what she had witnessed. But Mommy was crying a little, Semi added with the casual cruelty of childhood honesty. Happy crying like when she watched those Turkish shows. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Khalid's hands, which had been stroking Semi's hair, stilled as he fought to maintain his composure. He managed to explain that sometimes adults cried when they were happy about good news, his voice steady despite the storm building in his chest. From the kitchen came the sound of Maha's laughter, bright and musical, mixing with the deeper rumble of Faisal's voice as they discussed tomorrow's schedule. The normalcy of the scene, wife and driver coordinating household logistics, now carried sinister undertones that Khalid couldn't unhear. Every innocent interaction he had witnessed over the past months began to replay in his mind with new context. Maha's insistence that Faisal join them for iftar last Ramadan, her concern when Faisal mentioned his sick mother, the way she always seemed to know his schedule better than Khalid did. Semi wiggled down from his lap, her attention already moving to the cartoon playing on the television. But Khalid remained frozen in his chair, Semi's words echoing in his mind like a prayer call that couldn't be ignored. The comfortable weight of his success, the security of his family life, the trust he had built so carefully. All of it felt suddenly fragile, balanced on the edge of his daughter's innocent observation. As the call to prayer drifted through the evening air and the lights of Dubai began to twinkle beyond his windows, Khalid Al-Mazrouei faced the terrible possibility that everything he believed about his life might be built on deception. Sleep eluded Khalid that night. He lay in the darkness beside Maha, listening to her steady breathing while his mind churned through every interaction he could remember between his wife and their driver. The bedroom felt different somehow. The familiar scent of Maha's lavender lotion now seemed cloying, and the warmth of her body next to his carried an unfamiliar tension. The digital clock on his nightstand mocked him with its slow progression. Khalid's successful business had been built on his ability to read people, to sense the currents of dishonesty in negotiations and partnerships. How had he missed something so fundamental in his own home? Or worse, had he chosen not to see it? By dawn, Khalid had made a decision that felt both necessary and like a betrayal of everything he believed about trust and marriage. He would investigate Semi's observation with the same methodical approach he brought to business deals, gathering evidence before drawing conclusions. The morning routine proceeded with careful normalcy. Maha prepared breakfast while humming a melody from the radio, her movements graceful and unhurried. She wore a blue hijab that complemented her eyes, and when she smiled at Khalid over her coffee cup, he searched her face for signs of deception. But Maha looked exactly as she had every morning for 8 years, beautiful, content, and genuinely happy. Maha mentioned that Faisal needed to take the car for service that afternoon. She had told him to use the Toyota dealership near the mall. They were more expensive, but they did good work. Khalid nodded, filing away this information. When had they discussed car maintenance? How often did Maha and Faisal talk about household logistics when he wasn't present? Khalid announced he would be late that night, claiming the shipment from Thailand was delayed and he needed to coordinate with the customs office. Maha replied without hesitation that she and Semi would have a quiet evening, maybe watching that new animated movie Semi had been requesting. After dropping Semi at school, a task Faisal usually handled, Khalid spent the morning in his office making calls that could have waited, delaying his departure to observe the household rhythm in his absence. From his window, he watched Faisal wash the cars with unusual attention to detail, noting how the driver's eyes frequently darted toward the kitchen window where Maha was visible preparing lunch. At noon, Khalid announced his departure for a business meeting, kissing Maha goodbye with the performance of a trusting husband, while noting how she relaxed slightly as his car pulled away. Instead of heading to his office, he parked 3 streets away and walked back, positioning himself in the small park across from their villa where he could observe without being seen. What he witnessed over the next 2 hours destroyed the foundations of his world with surgical precision. Faisal, who should have been running errands or maintaining the vehicles, instead spent most of the afternoon inside the house. Through the kitchen window, Khalid could see fragments of interaction. Maha and Faisal standing closer than necessity required while reviewing a shopping list, their hands touching briefly as they reached for the same paper, moments of laughter that seemed too intimate for employer and employee. The most damning evidence came at 2:30 p.m., when Khalid saw them embrace in the living room. Not the quick, casual hug of friendship, but the lingering hold of 2 people who had found comfort in each other's arms. Even from a distance, Khalid could see the tenderness in the gesture. The way Maha leaned into Faisal's chest and how his hands stroked her hair with the familiarity of repeated practice. Khalid's hands shook as he gripped the park bench, the metal warm from the afternoon sun, but somehow unable to penetrate the ice forming in his chest. This was no longer speculation based on a child's innocent question. This was evidence of betrayal that reached into the core of his identity as a husband and father. The breaking point came 3 days later, when opportunity presented itself in the form of Maha's forgotten phone. She had left it charging in their bedroom while taking her shower, and for the first time in their marriage, Khalid found himself contemplating violating her privacy. The device sat on the nightstand like a loaded weapon, its black screen reflecting his conflicted face as he weighed 8 years of trust against his daughter's innocent question and 3 days of careful observation. The sound of running water from the bathroom made his decision for him. With trembling fingers, Khalid picked up the phone and entered Maha's passcode. Semi's birthday. A detail that now felt like salt in an open wound. The device unlocked immediately, revealing a home screen filled with family photos and innocuous apps. But Khalid's fingers moved with the precision of a man who had already lost everything and simply needed confirmation. The WhatsApp conversation with F contained months of messages that painted a portrait of deception, so comprehensive it took Khalid's breath away. Love messages that dated back 6 months. Plans for secret meetings when Khalid had late client meetings. Photos that showed his wife and his driver in intimate poses that belonged in a marriage, not an affair. But it was the most recent exchange that shattered whatever remained of Khalid's emotional control. Faisal had written about dreaming of taking Maha and Semi somewhere they could be a real family. Maha had responded that she needed more time to figure out how to tell Khalid that he had been so good to them and deserved honesty. Faisal had replied that Khalid would understand eventually, that they were meant to be together. Khalid's hands shook so violently that he nearly dropped the phone. The bathroom sounds continued. Maha washing her hair, humming the same melody she had sung that morning while making breakfast for a family that, he now realized, she was planning to destroy. The woman who had borne his child, who shared his bed and his dreams, who called him Hayati every night before sleep. She was planning to leave him for their driver. As the shower continued and his wife remained oblivious to his discovery, Khalid Al-Mazrouei felt something cold and final settle in his chest. By the time Maha emerged from the bathroom, her skin flushed and her hair wrapped in a towel, Khalid had replaced her phone exactly as he found it and made a decision that would change all their lives forever. Their 10th wedding anniversary was just 1 week away. The days following Khalid's discovery passed in a haze of careful performance and cold calculation. He moved through his routine with the precision of a method actor, maintaining every gesture of the loving husband while something fundamental shifted in his core. Maha seemed to notice nothing different. If anything, she appeared more relaxed, perhaps interpreting his increased attention as romantic anticipation for their approaching anniversary. Over breakfast, Khalid announced his thoughts about their anniversary dinner. It had been too long since they had a proper celebration. Just the two of us, he said with practiced excitement. Maha's face lit up with genuine pleasure, a reaction that might have warmed Khalid's heart a week earlier, but now felt like another layer of deception. Khalid suggested the Burj Al Arab, naming Dubai's most exclusive hotel. He wanted to book their private dining room, the one overlooking the Arabian Gulf. Something special for 10 years of marriage. Maha protested about the expense, but her eyes sparkled with anticipation. Khalid assured her she was worth every dirham, meaning it in ways she couldn't understand. He claimed to have already spoken to their events coordinator about preparing a special menu, including that chocolate dessert she loved from their first anniversary. The lie came easily, too easily. In reality, Khalid had spent the previous evening researching the hotel's private dining options and planning logistics with the methodical approach he brought to complex business deals. But unlike his commercial negotiations, this arrangement had only one possible outcome. That afternoon, while Maha believed him to be in meetings with potential clients, Khalid drove to a part of Dubai he had never had reason to visit before. The industrial area near Al-Qusais housed warehouses, auto repair shops, and the kind of businesses that thrived in the shadows of the city's gleaming reputation. His contact, reached through a labyrinth of encrypted messaging apps and cryptocurrency transactions, had been surprisingly professional in their communications. The meeting took place in a small office above a parts supplier, where a soft-spoken man in his 50s discussed Khalid's requirements with the matter-of-fact tone of someone arranging catering for a wedding. The substance, derived from castor beans and virtually undetectable in rich foods, would cause symptoms that mimicked a heart attack or severe allergic reaction. Death would come slowly, with enough time for final words but not enough for effective medical intervention. The man explained that ricin occurred naturally, so even if they tested for it, the symptoms could be explained by contaminated food. Many restaurants didn't properly clean their equipment. Very tragic, but not uncommon. Khalid paid in cash. Money withdrawn from a business account in small amounts over several weeks. The transaction felt surreal, like purchasing insurance or booking a vacation rather than arranging a murder. The supplier handed him a small glass vial containing what looked like powdered sugar, along with detailed instructions for dosage and application. The man added one final warning as Khalid prepared to leave. The effects were irreversible once administered. He should be very certain this was what he wanted. Khalid pocketed the vial without hesitation. Certainty was no longer a question. Maha had made her choice months ago when she decided to betray their marriage. He was simply ensuring that choice had consequences. The remainder of the week passed in careful orchestration. Khalid confirmed the hotel reservation, specifying that he would personally deliver a special dessert prepared by a family friend. A story that would satisfy the hotel's food safety protocols while ensuring the chocolate mousse reached Maha without contamination. He researched the symptoms of ricin poisoning, familiarizing himself with the timeline and presentation so he could play the role of shocked husband convincingly. Most importantly, he spent extra time with Semi, creating memories that would have to sustain them both through the aftermath. They visited the Dubai Aquarium, where Semi pressed her face against the glass and marveled at the whale sharks gliding through artificial depths. They had dinner at her favorite restaurant, where she ordered chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs and told him elaborate stories about their prehistoric adventures. The night before their anniversary, Khalid prepared the chocolate mousse in their kitchen while Maha slept upstairs. The recipe came from a dessert cookbook they had received as a wedding gift, a detail that provided its own bitter irony. He worked with the precision of a chef, following each step carefully before adding the final lethal ingredient. The ricin dissolved completely into the dark chocolate, invisible and tasteless. As he placed the dessert in a temperature-controlled container for transport to the hotel, Khalid felt a strange peace settle over him. Tomorrow, the deception would end. Maha would face the consequences of her choices, and he would be free to rebuild his life with Semi, assuming the police investigation didn't uncover his role in what would appear to be a tragic accident. The day of their 10th anniversary dawned with crystalline clarity, a flawless blue sky stretching over Dubai's ambitious skyline, the temperature hovering at a perfect 26 degrees. Khalid woke before his alarm, finding Maha already stirring beside him, her face soft with sleep and anticipation. Maha whispered happy anniversary, turning to kiss him with genuine warmth that would have melted his heart a week ago. Now it felt like a final insult added to months of injury. Khalid replied in kind, pulling her close and inhaling the familiar scent of her hair. For a moment, muscle memory overwhelmed conscious thought, and he felt the ghost of what their marriage had been before Faisal's presence poisoned it. The morning passed in careful choreography. Maha spent extra time choosing her outfit, a midnight blue dress that complemented her skin tone and the sapphire earrings Khalid had given her for their 5th anniversary. She moved through their bedroom with an excitement that seemed genuine, and Khalid found himself wondering if she had planned to confess her affair tonight, or if she intended to maintain the deception even during their celebration. Khalid told her she looked beautiful as she adjusted her hijab in the mirror, and meant it despite everything. The woman who had betrayed him was still the mother of his child, still capable of taking his breath away with her elegance. They arrived at the Burj Al Arab as the sun was setting over Dubai Marina, the hotel's sail-shaped silhouette glowing gold against the darkening sky. The private dining room overlooked the Arabian Gulf, where traditional dhows shared the water with luxury yachts, creating a tableau that epitomized Dubai's blend of heritage and ambition. The evening began exactly as Khalid had envisioned. Maha gasped with delight at the room's elegant setup, white roses everywhere, candles flickering in crystal holders, and a view that made the city sparkle like scattered diamonds. She looked genuinely happy, her face flushed with pleasure as she admired the attention to detail. Maha expressed her amazement at the incredible setup, unable to believe Khalid had arranged all this. He replied that 10 years deserved something special. His voice steady despite the weight of the dessert container he had quietly handed to their server upon arrival. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The dinner conversation flowed with surprising ease. They reminisced about their wedding day, laughed about Semi's latest adventures at school, and discussed plans for their upcoming family vacation to Turkey. For stretches of time, Khalid could almost forget what he knew, almost pretend they were simply a married couple celebrating a milestone. Maha's laughter was infectious, her stories animated, and her attention focused entirely on him, exactly the way it had been in the early days of their marriage. As they finished their main course, Maha asked if he ever thought about what their life might have been like if they had made different choices. Her voice carried a wistfulness that made Khalid's chest tighten. When he asked what kind of different choices, she toyed with her wedding ring and said she didn't know. Sometimes she wondered if they had settled into routine too quickly, if they had stopped seeing each other clearly because they got comfortable. The words carried multiple possible meanings, and Khalid studied her face carefully. Was this guilt speaking? An attempt to prepare him for devastating news? Or simply the kind of honest reflection that long marriages sometimes required? Khalid told her quietly that he saw her clearly, perhaps more clearly than ever. Something in his tone made Maha look up sharply, her eyes searching his face for meaning. For a moment, Khalid thought she might ask what he meant, might force the conversation into territory that would require him to reveal his knowledge. But then their server appeared with the chocolate mousse, 2 elegant portions garnished with gold leaf and fresh berries. The server announced the chef's special dessert, made according to Khalid's specific request. Maha clapped her hands together with childlike delight, recognizing the chocolate mousse from their first anniversary. She asked how he had remembered. Khalid replied that he remembered everything about them, every moment that mattered. As Maha took her first bite, her eyes closed with pleasure. She murmured that it was perfect, exactly like she remembered. Khalid barely touched his own dessert, too focused on monitoring Maha's consumption and watching for the first signs of distress. The ricin would take 20 to 40 minutes to begin affecting her, according to his research. Until then, they would continue this macabre performance of marital celebration. Suddenly, Maha said she had something to tell him, setting down her spoon after finishing nearly half the mousse. Her voice carried a seriousness that made Khalid's pulse quicken. She explained that she had been thinking about their earlier conversation, about making different choices. There was something she needed to say, something that had been weighing on her heart. Khalid leaned forward, every muscle in his body tense with anticipation. Finally, the truth was coming. Maha continued that she knew she hadn't been the best wife lately. She had been distracted, maybe not as present as she should be. She wanted him to know that she was grateful for everything he had given her, for the life they had built, for the way he loved Semi and her. She reached across the table to take his hand, her fingers warm against his palm. She wanted to be better, she said. She wanted them to be better. Starting tonight. The words hit Khalid like physical blows. This wasn't a confession, it was a recommitment. Maha wasn't admitting to her affair. She was promising to end it. The guilt he had seen in her behavior hadn't been about maintaining the deception, but about preparing to return to their marriage fully. Maha insisted on finishing her thought when Khalid began to speak. She told him she loved him, loved their family. Whatever else she might have. She paused, seeming to struggle with her words. Whatever mistakes she might have made in her heart, she wanted to fix them. She wanted to choose them. The room began to spin slightly as Khalid processed what he was hearing. Maha's face had grown pale, and she pressed her free hand to her stomach with a look of confusion. She said she felt strange, a little dizzy. Khalid watched in horror as the woman who had just recommitted to their marriage began to show the first symptoms of ricin poisoning. Her confession had come too late. The dessert was already in her system, the process already begun. The next few minutes passed in a nightmare blur. Maha collapsed from her chair, her body convulsing as the poison attacked her system. Khalid knelt beside her, calling for help while his mind reeled with the terrible irony of what he had done. The woman dying in his arms had been planning to save their marriage, not destroy it. As hotel staff rushed into the room and emergency services were called, Maha whispered that she was sorry for everything. Khalid told her not to talk, to save her strength. But they both knew it was too late. Maha Al-Mazrouei died at 9:47 p.m. on her 10th wedding anniversary, surrounded by strangers in a hotel room that was supposed to celebrate a decade of love. The investigation began immediately. Dubai's police force approached Maha's death with thorough professionalism. The initial assumption, food poisoning from contaminated ingredients, seemed logical given the restaurant setting and Maha's symptoms. Khalid played the role of grieving widower with an authenticity born of genuine horror at what he had done. The autopsy revealed traces of ricin in Maha's system, transforming the investigation from a restaurant safety issue into a murder inquiry. Within days, the police had discovered the affair through Maha's phone records and social media activity. Faisal, who had panicked and fled to Lebanon immediately after learning of Maha's death, became the primary suspect. His flight appeared to confirm his guilt, a lover who had killed his mistress in a moment of passion or desperation. But the investigation slowly uncovered inconsistencies in the official story. The dessert that couldn't be traced to the hotel's kitchen, the cash withdrawals from Khalid's business account, and security footage that placed him in parts of Dubai he had no legitimate reason to visit. The arrest came on a Thursday morning 3 weeks after Maha's death. Khalid was in his office reviewing contracts when Detective Sarah Al-Rashid arrived with a warrant and a team of officers. He didn't resist. The fight had gone out of him the moment he realized what Maha had been trying to tell him during their anniversary dinner. Semi was staying with Maha's sister, protected from the worst details but old enough to understand that both her parents were gone forever. The innocent question that had started everything had led to a reality where she had no parents at all. During the trial, the full scope of Khalid's planning was revealed. The prosecution painted him as a cold-blooded killer who had used his anniversary celebration as cover for premeditated murder. The defense argued that he was a man driven to temporary insanity by betrayal and violation of trust. Faisal was eventually extradited from Lebanon to testify. His testimony revealed the complexity of the affair, a relationship that had begun with mutual attraction but had grown into genuine love. He described Maha's guilt about the deception and her growing determination to either confess to Khalid or end the affair entirely. The anniversary dinner, he revealed, was supposed to be Maha's opportunity to choose her path definitively. Faisal testified that Maha had loved Khalid, loved her daughter more than anything, and loved her husband. The affair was his fault. He had pursued her when she was vulnerable, and he had convinced her that what they had was worth the risk. The jury deliberated for 3 days before returning a verdict of guilty on charges of first-degree murder. Khalid was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. As the sentence was read, he thought about Semi, now 8 years old and living with relatives who would have to explain why her father had killed her mother over a betrayal that might have ended anyway. In his prison cell, Khalid kept a photograph of his family taken during happier times, himself, Maha, and Semi laughing at something outside the camera's view. The image served as both comfort and torment, a reminder of what he had lost through his inability to forgive, to trust, to believe that love could survive betrayal. Semi visited him once a year on her birthday, a tradition that her aunt maintained despite her own feelings about Khalid's crime. During these visits, she would tell him about school, her friends, and her dreams for the future. She never asked why he had done what he did, perhaps understanding that some questions had no answers that could provide comfort. On the 5th anniversary of Maha's death, Khalid received a letter from Faisal, who had returned to Lebanon and married a woman from his village. The letter carried a message that haunted Khalid's remaining days. Maha was going to choose Khalid that night. She was going to end everything between them and recommit to their marriage. She loved Khalid enough to sacrifice her own happiness for their family's stability. Faisal thought Khalid should know that he had killed a woman who was trying to save what they both had built. The letter confirmed what Khalid had suspected since that terrible night in the hotel room. His anniversary trap had caught the wrong target. Instead of punishing a woman planning to destroy his family, he had murdered a wife who was trying to preserve it. The betrayal that had driven him to murder had been ending just as his revenge was beginning. Khalid's story became a cautionary tale told in Dubai's expatriate community, a reminder that some wounds could only be healed by forgiveness, and that the desire for revenge often destroyed more than the original betrayal ever could. The man who had built his success on careful planning and thorough execution had failed to plan for the one variable that mattered most: the possibility that love could overcome deception. The anniversary that was supposed to celebrate 10 years of marriage instead marked the beginning of a prison sentence that would last the rest of Khalid's life. And somewhere in Dubai, a little girl named Semi continued to grow up, carrying the burden of her father's choice and the memory of a mother who had died trying to come home.